Hey everybody, John Fenn here, Church Without Walls International, CWOWI.org. We are a house church network. I encourage you to visit our website to sign up for my weekly thoughts, which is a weekly teaching that comes out by email every Friday on a variety of different subjects, and also for my monthly e-newsletters that come out about the 20th of each month. That's where I put words prophetic, anything the Lord has showed me. And also in the headers of those is where we put our Zoom online meetings, our conferences, things of that nature. So I hope you'll visit our website and sign up for those. But also on our website you can visit, you can see 10 question answer videos about house church. There's numerous articles, things of that nature. Lots of teaching and everything available there. So CWOWI.org. All right, today, again, rather unusual, sharing a part of the visitation the Lord and the things he talked to me about for 2023 for some. This involves something very specific. Some of you will recall from our Zoom meeting this past month and also in my monthly newsletter for those that get it, that he had shared about strengthening what remains. And then he said, for many, this year will be a course correction, that he's been dealing with many on different elements, and for many it will be a course correction. That's the element I felt led to talk about today. And again, hope you can appreciate this is rather unusual for me to share like this, because normally I just put it with people who are actually interested enough to sign up for my weekly thoughts in my monthly newsletter, and I'm more loyal to them from that standpoint. So anyway, but it may help some people. I just am compelled to do this. So the first example is in what a course correction. We'll look at some examples in Jesus' life. In Mark chapter 1, I believe it's verses 29 through 39, Jesus comes to Peter's mother-in-law's house. All right, so his wife's mom's house, Peter's wife's mom's house. And she's sick with a fever. Jesus grabs her by the hand, lays hands on her, the fever leaves, and she gets up and serves her many guests. But it says that it says the whole city was gathered at the door of the house until and around sundown, and Jesus healed many and cast out demons and everything else. So you can imagine this picture. Jesus and his band of followers come to Peter's mother-in-law's house, and he heals her. She gets up, serves them, etc. But the whole village, the whole city is gathered at the door of the house until sundown, and Jesus heals people and everything else. And then and you think, okay, it's going great. And that's what everybody thinks. But the text tells us in Mark chapter 1 that Jesus rose great while before day, so it's still dark, still in the early morning light, and he goes off by himself and prays. And soon Peter and the disciples find him, and they say, Lord, come on, everybody is looking for you. But instead of going back to the house and picking up where they left off at sundown, Jesus says, I've got to go into other villages. That's what I'm called to do. Now, this is a change of direction for Jesus, and many times we experience that too. Things are going along at a certain rate, and then there's a sudden change of direction. Peter would not have understood. The disciples would not have understood. The village, the city, whatever, would not have understood Jesus' change of direction, because it was in the middle of something that was going on that was very successful. But Jesus received direction that he needed to leave. And so look at the process here. There was a great flow, and then they slept. So there's rest. So you have the flow, then you have a time of rest. And then Jesus woke up. And this is like an epiphany. This is like a revelation that we get. Jesus wakes up and he goes and he communes with the Father, and he realizes he has to change direction. So there's the flow, then there's the rest, then there's the wake up, then there's the revelation, and then there's the telling people, I've got to change direction. So there's a process to this. Another example is in Luke chapter 9. In verses 28 through 39, I think it is. It's the transfiguration. And Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up onto the mountain, and he's transfigured before him. And Moses and Elijah talk to Jesus about his death. I think verse 35 says, his death, which would happen in Jerusalem. Moses is talking to Jesus out of the law, which would be the tabernacle, the types and the shadows of the sacrifices, everything that the law says. And Elijah was talking to him from the prophets, everything about prophecy, everything about the Messiah. So between the law and the prophets, Moses and Elijah, they were talking to him about his death, which would happen in Jerusalem. Now understand what a wonderful flow of ministry this had been up to that point. I mean, yes, John the Baptist had been beheaded, but in Jesus' own ministry, he had just finished feeding the 5,000 plus women and children. He had sent the 12 out. He had a tremendous number of miracles. He's going along. The ministry is building. And suddenly the transfiguration comes, and Moses and Elijah talk to him about his death, which is going to happen in Jerusalem. When he comes down from the mountain, the mood of Jesus is noticeably different. He's in a bad mood, if you want to put it this way. The first thing that happens is the man comes with the son with seizures. And when he asked for Jesus to heal his son, Jesus said, "O faithless and perverted generation, how long am I going to be with you? How long am I going to put up with you? Bring him here." And so Jesus does this. And right after that, he tells the disciples privately, he says, "Let these sayings sink into your ears and into your hearts, that the Son of Man is going to be betrayed and arrested and handed over to men." So he tells them, he's eager to tell them, "I'm going to die." He has this revelation. And of course, he's the Son of God. He knew that. He knew why he came into the world. But the timing of it, he walked as a man who was filled with the Spirit of God. He walked as one of us. Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7 tell us that Christ emptied himself of all the rights and privileges of God's Son to be formed as a man, and finding himself as a man, he humbled himself even to the death of the cross. So he walked as a person, who's filled with the Spirit of God. So Moses and Elijah are saying, "Okay, course correction, got to change directions here, Lord." And so that's the direction he went. Right after he tells them he's going to be arrested, there's somebody there who's not with them, yet he's casting out demons. And Jesus says, "Leave him alone. He that's not with us or he that's not against us is for us. Let him go." And then there's a village and verse 51 says, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. He made a determination, I've got to go to Jerusalem. And then there's some Samaritans who won't accept him and won't give him lodging for the night. And Peter and the disciples, James and John and everything, they said, "Let's call down fire like Elijah did." And Jesus said, "You guys don't know what spirit you're of. I didn't come to destroy men's lives. I came to save them." And so his whole mood, his whole attitude changes. This is like us sometimes. We're going along, and yes, we've had a tragedy like with Jesus. John the Baptist, his cousin, was beheaded. But things are going well overall. There's some bumps in the road, but you're going well. And then suddenly you have this epiphany. You have this revelation. You have to change direction. Your mood changes. You don't know why, but somehow on the inside you have no more grace for the things that you've been doing. It could be a job. It could be a church you've been at. It could be in relationships that are difficult and you realize it's become toxic. It could be any number of things. But you're going along and you think things are going well enough, but then the revelation comes. And again, you see the same kind of pattern. There's a flow to it. And then there's a time alone where Jesus is alone with Peter, James, and John, and there's a flow to it. There's revelation with James in their presence with Moses and Elijah. The Father speaks out of the bright cloud, "This is my Son." And there's this revelation, there's this time of rest. In fact, if you look at Luke chapter 9, it says the next day when he came down from the mountain. So there was some time involved that we don't understand, or that's not listed, I should say, in Luke chapter 9. And so there's this time of flow, then a time of rest, revelation, a decision to change direction. And again, people don't understand it. They're thinking, wow, he's set his face to go to Jerusalem. Why is this? Why has he changed the direction? And some people didn't like it. Some people wouldn't even give him lodging. But rather than get angry with him, he just set about his business and went on. So last thing real quick was in Acts chapter 18, verses 1 through 9, especially 1 through 11, where Paul is at Corinth. And he wants to leave there. Having started the church, he wants to leave. And you can understand why, because, on his first journey, he dealt with a sorcerer and got beat up. And then he was called on the carpet before the elders in the church in Jerusalem in Acts 15 to see if it's legal and right and proper to share the gospel with Gentiles. Then in Acts chapter 16, he's whipped. He and Silas are whipped and beaten and hanging by chains in the Philippian jail. And then he goes to Thessalonica and there's a riot. And then finally he goes to Corinth and he's like, okay, I started the church. I'm getting out of here before any more trouble happens. But it says the Lord appeared to him that night and he said, "Paul, I want you to stay in Corinth. I've got many people here, but I give you this promise. No one is going to set on you to hurt you or harm you in any way." And Paul stayed 18 months. So that was a situation where Paul had made plans to make changes in his life. And the Lord said, "No, I want you to stay because I've got a lot of people here. Finish the work." And so it was a revelation to Paul. So it's the same type of thing where you have a flow, a stop, a concentration, a time of introspection, and then the Lord appeared to him and told him and said, no, I want you to stay. And so Paul, changes directions, puts the brakes on what he was going to do at the Lord's direction. And so anyway, those three things, those are elements from what the Lord said in 2023 that the first, I've shared before, strengthen that which remains. There are many people who've had things pruned off, relationships, etc., and to strengthen that. But the other thing that I've gone into today is that for many, this is going to be a course correction. So I hope these three examples will give you insight into the processes perhaps happening in your life, where there's a flow, then there's a rest, then there's a wake-up call, and then there's some contemplation, getting alone with the Father, getting alone with the Lord, and then a change of direction and announcing it. Always, in each case, people didn't understand the change of directions, but it was a revelation personally to Jesus, and in my third example, to Paul. So I hope this has been a blessing to you. cwowi.org. God bless. Bye-bye.